Hi everyone. 13. Whatever it takes. Rape is not sex. Rape is an act of violence. A rapist needs to control and humiliate his victim. The karate instructor's loud voice echoed with authority in the small, old-fashioned gym at the Center for the Blind. It might make you uncomfortable to hear some things I talk about, Mr. Lee continued. But my job is to teach you the skills you need to protect yourself. The number one skill? He held up his index finger. Information. Natalie fixed her small circle of vision on the short but lanky, ponytailed man. He stood with his hands on his narrow hips, while the girls in Natalie's gym class sat before him in rapt attention, cross-legged on the polished wooden floor. They wore t-shirts, shorts, and sneakers, and had just completed 20 minutes of exercises, stretches, sit-ups, modified push-ups, jumping jacks, before Mr. Lee sat them down to talk. Their skin glistened with sweat, and the smell of perspiration hung in the air. This is the book we will use in the class. Safe, soft, sight. Safe without sight. Mr. Lee held up a copy and thumped a finger on its title. Each of you will get a copy. I have it in Braille, large print books, and tapes. You will read or listen to every word in this book. You will learn how to protect yourself through non-violent ways first. That means using your brain. We'll discuss 3 important skills: awareness, intuition, and how to set boundaries. But you're also going to learn the tough stuff. How to use your hands, feet, canes, fingers, whatever it takes to save your life. Whoa, this was really going to be an interesting class, Natalie was thinking. To her left, she could hear Eve still quietly taking in gulps of air to recover from the exercise. To her right, Serena wiped sweat off her face with the bottom of her t-shirt. Mr. Lee lowered his voice a notch. I'm not going to pussyfoot around in here. If you don't want to take this on, go ahead and leave. No hard feelings. But if you stay, you are a part of the class. We will work hard, and we will work together. Suddenly, Murph pushed herself up and stood, her 2 sneakers slapping the wood floor. I'm leaving then, she announced. My mother would throw a fit if she heard you talking about these things. Natalie quickly focused back on Mr. Lee to catch his reaction. He seemed surprised. Okay, he replied crisply. But you talk to your mother, young lady, and ask her. Does she want you to have knowledge? To be prepared? Or does she want you to be an ignorant victim on the street? Murph faced away from the teacher, which seemed strange, and paused, as though expecting the others to stand up too. But no one else made a move. Finally, Murph began walking out of the gym, her cane tapping on the floor and growing fainter as she moved farther away. Was the only sound as everyone absorbed her departure. For some reason, Natalie couldn't quite pin it down. She felt sorry for Murph. True or false? Mr. Lee called out sharply, steering the girls' attention back to the lesson. Nice-looking people are still likely to be raped. Serena's hand shot up. True. True, she called out. False, Mr. Lee fired back. The book says 90% of rapists think about their attack first. It has nothing to do with sexy, nice-looking people. Rapists are looking for an easy target. They are looking for a woman who appears weak. So, you're blind. Does that make you an easy target? No one attempted to reply this time. Ah, Mr. Lee is thinking you girls say, yes, blind people are an easy target. If you think this way, you probably are. He threw open his hands and raised his voice. But you don't have to be an easy target. I love Mr. Lee. Walk with a sense of confidence and purpose, he told them. Natalie was able to see his ponytail swing as he turned and strode across the gym floor in front of the girls. His chest and chin were up, and one arm moved side to side in front of him as though he were maneuvering an invisible cane. He stopped and faced them again. Blind people can't drive cars. They must use public transportation. Subways, buses, taxis, all these things put you at more risk. But there are many things you can do to protect yourself. It's easy. We will start learning tonight. He clapped his hands a single time. Now, once a criminal decides to commit a violent crime, he needs two things. He needs a victim and he needs an opportunity. Mr. Lee tapped his head. So, use your brain first. He picked up the book and read from it. Listen to the sounds around you. Footsteps, voices, vehicles, water draining in the gutters, windows opening and closing. Pay attention to your relative proximity to the sources of the sounds and how it changes, gets closer or further away from you. As you pass other people who may be talking, notice their tone of voice and what they are saying. Your sense of smell can give you important information too, he continued. Things like cologne. Ah, he smells nice. The girls giggled. But what about those other smells? Cigarette smoke. Mothballs on clothing, alcohol in the breath, personal body odor. When the girls laughed at the body odor reference, Mr. Lee shook his head and waggled his finger at them. No, no, no! The girls stopped laughing. An important clue, Mr. Lee emphasized. And then he began talking about a special skill some blind people can develop called acute spatial awareness. Some blind people can feel the presence of a tall building, a tree, or another person. Oh, I can do that. I'm not even kidding, guys. I can really. You just feel the wall next to you. It's like, yeah. Natalie was fascinated but skeptical. Because how could anyone feel the presence of a building? Eve is good at it, one of the girls offered. Natalie didn't catch who had spoken. Eve? Eve, would you like to tell us more about it? Mr. Lee asked. I'm sorry, Mr. Lee's just going to talk really loud because I can't think of a voice for him right now. I don't want to be racist. There was a pause, and Natalie wondered if Eve would even reply because she was so shy. Well, it's not just a thing that's there, she began quietly, but also when it's not there, like a space. Can you explain that? Mr. Lee asked. I'll try. I'm not sure, but I can feel an open space, Eve said. Like in a building, I can tell when I get to a place where the halls meet. where the halls where the hall gets bigger. I can tell if there's a doorway, sometimes even a window. But how? But how? Natalie asked from her seat on the floor beside Eve. It's kind of like a difference in the air, Eve said. You can feel it. That and the sound of your footsteps and the tapping of your cane. The sound is louder if you're in an enclosed space because the sound is bouncing back to you. It's like echolocation, what the bats use. Mr. Lee, I did the same program as Eve. Serena suddenly piped up. It was at the National Federation of the Blind place downtown. They taught us that stuff about echolocation, but I didn't hear anything different. Because you never tried, Eve accused. Bunch of patootie, Serena retorted. You needed to have confidence in it for it to work, Eve countered. You needed to use the straight cane all the time, and you needed to wear the sleeve shades, which you refused, remember? Yeah, so if that program did so much for you, Eve, then why are you here? Serena shot back. Why aren't you in public school? Down in Caesar Salad, Maryland, or wherever. Waldorf. Wherever. Waldorf, Eve murmured. Waldorf salad. That's it. Serena chortled. Stop! Mr. Lee clapped his hands. We won't have that here. The room fell silent again. Natalie wished Serena hadn't interrupted. She was really insensitive sometimes. Enough for today, Mr. Lee said. I'll see you girls next week. Natalie stood with the others to leave. Interesting class, she thought, although she sure didn't want to think she'd ever want what Mr. Lee was teaching them. No, ever need what Mr. Lee was teaching them. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the book, Mr. Lee was calling after them. What you learn here may save your life one day.